chemical concoctions in my water.
Why you wanna poison me? Why you wanna poison me? Why you wanna poison me?
With your chemical concoctions in my water.
Fluoride is a controversial topic that has come into the crosshairs recently through Donald Trump's appointment of Robert Kennedy Jr. to his cabinet in charge of health and human services.
It is, yes, very controversial.
Yeah, Robert Kennedy Jr. has spoken out against the fluoridation of the water. Many communities in the US have condemned the practice, while local activists have achieved success in getting rid of it in the United States, as well as in Europe, where in Europe the practice is seen as decline.
In parts of the United States, yes.
Meanwhile, new studies are constantly emerging that question the efficacy of this practice. In all of Latin America, fluoride is put in the salt.
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
Exactly. Is it a mineral like iodine, which is also put in the salt? Or is it something very far from a mineral that does terrible harm? Probably it would surprise a lot of people, especially dentists, to know that there is actually a debate about this subject. I'm curious about why it says on toothpaste that if ingested, contact the poison control center. Yeah, so my co-host Patrick is here to shed some light on these issues. Welcome, Patrick.
Yeah, welcome. Well, I got into the fluoride subject many years ago because when I first got into independent journalism, there were the journalists that I admired that thought that fluoride was something that was a big deal. And it also says a lot about the public's relation to government and public health and kind of this.
But let's just start by asking, like, what's your problem with fluoride?
Okay, well, we're sitting in front of a picture that I printed out from early in the 20th century when sodium fluoride, when they were honest about the uses of
Our audience can see it now on the screen.
It says it's an insecticide. It's effective against cockroaches, water bugs, lice, and poultry. Sodium fluoride, and it says poison, not for internal use. So my problem with fluoride is that it is a poison, and as something that is put in our food supply, and in the United States, of course, it's not in the salt, but it's in the water. And they also, in the schools, they give the children green drinks of fluoride. That's been confirmed for me from teachers.
Yeah, but give us a little history of water fluoridation.
So after the Second World War, the chemical companies that had been involved in weapons manufacturing, they faced a crisis because they didn't have a place to put their industrial waste. So you can't dump it in a river, so they dump it in us. Fluoride was introduced to public drinking water in the 1940s. And initially it was widely accepted as a great medical innovation and was regarded as safe. Now, however, many are realizing fluoride is not what we have been led to believe. There's a great book by Christopher Bryson called The Fluoride Deception, documentary films. It's a byproduct. Fluoride is a byproduct that they can't do anything with. It's a poison, and so they sell it. We allow the industry to use our water supply and in Latin America and the salt to dispose of their hazardous waste. It was a scam from the get-go. It's a means of getting rid of fluoride, putting it in us. It's a disposal mechanism, but the worst recycling practice in the globe. Raw aluminum needs to be processed, and this process creates fluoride. If you ask most Ecuadorians or Americans why, people don't know. They might think that it's in the salt as a process, part of the refining process of salt, or that's in the water to kill the bacteria. The U.S., contrary to public opinion in Latin America, does not have clean drinking water. Canada doesn't have clean drinking water because Canada also dumps fluoride. So this question of clean water is absolutely essential. Sodium fluoride, sodium silicofluoride, and fluorosilicic acid. They're all used in dental offices, toothpaste, and water fluoridation. They're all toxic waste substances created from the creation process in the fertilizer, steel, nuclear, and aluminum industries. These artificial substances should not be confused with a naturally occurring element, which is a mineral. And many involved in dentistry assume that the fluoride that's used for these things is pharmaceutical grade, and it's not.
But where is fluoride sourced from? Is
Yeah.
it a mineral?
Well, it is a mineral like a lot of poisons, but when they are in nature, they're bound to other elements which make them harmless. Like aluminum is mineral,
It's a mineral,
but
yeah.
it's never found in nature in free form. And this is also one of the things in the geoengineering debate. Look, 3 milliliters of fluoride will kill an adult, and that's about a teaspoon. And 0.3 milliliters will kill a child if you give a child pure fluoride, and that's a little less than a teaspoon.
Like you mentioned something about the truck. Tell us about the truck that transported fluoride in the US that crashed.
Oh, right. Yeah. So in the United States, there are laws and rules about how poisons have to be transported, and they have to have these warning labels on them so people know if there is a crash to get away. And a truck transporting fluoride from one to the municipal water supplies, it crashed. And by the time, and the fluoride got onto the pavement,
The floor, the
on
pavement.
the ground of the highway. And by the time the emergency services had gotten there, the fluoride had actually eaten a hole in the pavement. And so you can imagine what it's doing to our stomachs. And fluoride is accumulative. In the United States, we recycle the water. They claim that they clean it, but it's on such a nanoparticle level anyway. And so it's also going on the crops. It's going on the crops over and over again.
What do the fact-checking websites say about this?
Okay, so I know that a lot of people have Googled this in Spanish and English because they send me these things. And I also look at what these websites that claim to be debunking fake news are saying. And they imply, in a lot of ways, that fluoride is a mineral. And although they don't come out and say that the fluoride that is sourced for these uses is a mineral, they imply it. And a lot of these websites in Spanish are directed around the issue of salt and the fluoride. And one of the ways that they imply that fluoride is a mineral is they say, well, these people like me who showed the fluoride when it was used as an insecticide, that's a different type of fluoride. They're implying that we use pharmaceutical grade. And there are different types of fluoride. That's true. There's different types of poison, but notice they avoid the toxicological issue, the question of fluoride's toxicity, because the question we should be asking isn't, is it a different kind of fluoride that was once upon a time used for rat poison, but rather, is the fluoride that's put into our water and our salt and used in dentistry, is it poison, and how toxic is it? And that's a conversation that they don't want to have. And maybe now with the new Trump administration, we can have that conversation.
And what are the facts of fluoride?
Well, we did the interview with Sally Falamoro of the
last
Price
year
Foundation, and she mentioned that they gave it to zoo animals in the Soviet Union because they noticed that fluoride made the zoo animals passive. And Hitler gave fluoride to the Jews in the concentration camps. But how do we know it makes you passive? Well, look no further than at one point in history, in the 20th century, fluoride was used to treat overactive thyroid. That is, it's a thyroid depressant. And so just by implication, you can figure that it's making people passive. And the way that poisons work in terms of accumulation, it's the longer you take it, the more vulnerable you become to the long-term effects.
How does fluoride compare with other poisons in terms of toxicity?
Yeah, so a lot of people will laugh or make fun of me when I say that it's a poison, and then it's not comparable to something that's just bad for you, like smelling cleaning products or white sugar. When I say poison, I really mean poison. Like lead, like cyanide, and like arsenic. Now, you could eat a little bit of cyanide or arsenic or lead every day, and you develop a tolerance, and your body would build up that ability.
Immune system.
That doesn't mean, well, like in lead, it accumulates. And the effects of fluoride, it attacks the endocrine system. This is the thyroid gland, the hypothalamus, the adrenals, the pituitary gland. All these things are under attack. And I believe that fluoride makes people stupid, and it makes people willing to accept government tyranny. The very thing that we see all around us.
What about the claim that fluoride prevents cavities?
Yeah, so this is, of course, the history of fluoride use in dentistry. The thing is that there were studies that showed that topically administered on the surface of the teeth, that fluoride prevented cavities. Now, I'm skeptical about the truthfulness of those studies because I don't think they took into consideration the difference between fluoride as a mineral and fluoride as industrial waste. But even if you accept these, if you accept the truthfulness that, okay, there were these studies, it's very different from ingesting it. It's like if I say that sunscreen is effective on the skin to protect from sunburn, if I go to the beach and I eat the sunscreen, not only is that going to be a very toxic experience, but it has nothing to do with the intended use. So to make the leap of reasoning to saying that fluoride is useful topically in preventing dental cavities, and then saying that it should be ingested or drank in green drinks, has nothing to do with the intended use. And there's been no studies showing that it's safe when ingested. Now, fluoride has become, the mainstream has started to turn around over the last 5 years, because there's been articles in mainstream medical magazines, like in the main medical magazine for children's doctors a couple years ago, showing that pregnant women who consume fluoride, that the IQ or intelligence quotient of the baby was reduced. And there's big concern in the US that communities like Black communities are being over fluoridated. And there's a study just in the last few months that questioned the safety of fluoride. But for the most part, these studies, they avoid the toxicological issue, and they avoid the issue of the fact that administered topically is very different from drinking it and ingesting it all the time. And if you live in Latin America, you cannot escape having fluoride, because if you go to the restaurant, if you eat out, if you buy bread, they use it. It says on the package, contains fluoride, and they've convinced the people that it's good for the teeth. So now it's possible to get other salt, like if you go to a natural shop and you buy like the sea salt or the pink salt, or salt for the cows, and then grind it up. But it does require a little bit of thought and planning.
Has this come under the regulatory agencies that govern health and environmental impact?
The answer is no. So in the United States, we have these regulatory agencies like the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, or the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. And these really function as de facto regulatory agencies for the entire world, because when something's approved it's considered safe for the entire world. Fluoride never came under the review of the Food and Drug Administration, even though something that's added to the food supply for medical use, claimed medical use, it should have come under the review of the FDA, but there's no way that they would even approve it because however corrupt they are, they still work with, they have to receive some degree of public scrutiny, and they would never do this. And the environmental impact, this is obviously very important because it's recycled, it goes on the crops, it goes into the soil over and over and over again, because in the United States we recycle the water, you know, and people flush their garbage down the toilet and they think end of story. They don't realize that it's back at the end of their forks and knives back on their dinner plate a couple weeks later.
But why should we care about fluoride?
Well, I started this broadcast talking about how the governments are putting this into our bodies as a way to keep us enslaved. And although there are groups in the United States and journalists and books like Fluoride Deception by Christopher Bryson that focus on fluoride and the abuses of fluoride, in Latin America, those groups don't exist. And if the governments can get away with putting an actual poison in our food supply that's comparable to lead and cyanide and arsenic, then they can get away with anything. And so it's a very important issue because it cuts to the core of this question of having safe children and having safe families and having a community. So we go to bed at night assuming that the governments in the country we live are making sure that this stuff doesn't happen. And so it really says something about us as a society that we would allow this. And it says something about the government, that they would